dilemmas. So we know that Hamlet's major problem is whether or not to kill his uncle. And this is shown through hesitant language, through feminine endings of iambic pentameter, like we've talked about in the past, disjointed prose that shows a sense of uncertainty or maybe madness, and the oscillations between two extremes. So at times he exclaims things like, "Now I could drink hot blood," and at other times he's asking, "Am I a coward?" So this shows the two extremes that are battling within him. There's a big internal conflict here. So he has the decision whether or not he wants to be a medieval avenger or a Renaissance man. And we know which one of those two really suits his character better. Another dilemma in the play to think about is Ophelia's divided loyalty between her lover and her father. Of course, she doesn't really get a choice. By the values and context of the day, she just has to obey her father as though she doesn't have any free will of her own. But she still does feel responsible for Hamlet's madness because she believes that he's gone insane with love for her. And therefore, she feels responsible for her father's death. And this is probably what leads to her madness and suicide. Loyalty. So loyalty is very much a big part of this play. It's first questioned through the over-hasty marriage. So Gertrude is considered disloyal to her first husband by Hamlet by marrying only 3 months after he has died. Claudius has also committed one of the worst acts of disloyalty. He has killed his brother. So the whole scene is set with people being disloyal and making at least very strange choices, if not openly disloyal choices. Horatio, in contrast, is an incredibly loyal friend, even putting off his desire for suicide in order to tell Hamlet's story after he's gone. So that's a very selfless act and probably one that Christians would really applaud. Horatio is the foil character to Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, who spy on Hamlet for the king. So keep in mind that Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are Hamlet's very old childhood friends, so they do owe him loyalty first. Hamlet recognises their disloyalty and deception in the "would you play upon this pipe" scene, where he says, "You seem to know my stops, you'd seem to know how to get a sound out of me, but you don't know how to play this pipe." So he's saying that his friends haven't got very much respect for him because they're trying to play on him and understand the way he works. Hamlet also tests Ophelia's loyalty when he asks her during their confrontation, "Where is your father?" And Ophelia answers, "At home, my lord," even though she knows Polonius is eavesdropping on their conversation in the next room. Hamlet obviously also suspects this, and in response he begins the "get thee to a nunnery" rant at her, which echoes his phrase about Gertrude, "Frailty, thy name is woman." So Hamlet accuses all women of being weak and therefore disloyal, but this is rather unfair of him. Ophelia has to act within the socially acceptable rules for women and daughters in her society, so again, she doesn't really get a choice. She has to behave as society tells her to behave. And he may also be wronging Gertrude. So we sort of assume that, he says his father was wonderful and great and he hero worships him, but that does appear to be a little bit over the top. And we don't really ever get to see what Hamlet Sr. was like, much the same way that Gertrude's character before all of this happened is a little unclear. So it is possible that Hamlet Sr. wasn't as nice as mythologized. Corruption. So Marcellus begins this theme by describing the setting, "Something is rotten in the state of Denmark." So that's almost the opening line of the play, and it sets the scene for what's going to happen. The dead king describes his murder most foul, so we often have rotten imagery associated with it. Decay, rotten, foul, are all those sorts of phrases that bring to mind what's wrong with Denmark. And it also invokes the idea of the great chain of being, which is now being corrupted. So the great chain of being is an Elizabethan concept, where society is structured kind of like a pyramid, and the king is at the very top of the pyramid. So if something bad happens to the king, or if the king is corrupt, it will filter down through the nobles, and down through the merchants, and down through the peasants, until all of society suffers for it. Hamlet suggests that incest has corrupted his mother, because in marriage, husband and wife are considered one flesh, and so Hamlet says that she has married her brother, not her brother-in-law. So there's a lot of different meanings of corruption and incest and all that sort of stuff going on. Rosencrantz, Guildenstern, and Laertes are all corrupted by Claudius, who influences them to either becoming attempted murderers or successful murderers. Hamlet is also corrupted by his quest. He rashly stabs Polonius and drags his whole kingdom to chaos in order to achieve something that's a personal affair. Now, for a noble king or a noble prince, that's not a very clever thing to do. And then we come to appearance versus reality, which is obviously a theme throughout the play and gives it a lot of its colourful or dramatic air. Hamlet puts on an antic disposition, so he pretends he's going to be crazy so that the king doesn't question him too closely. But as the play continues, we start to wonder whether or not it's an act. So when the play begins, Hamlet's father has been dead for 3 months. And then he says, it's only been 3 months. Then he says it's only been 1 month. Then he says later on it's only been a little month. And then to Ophelia he says that his father's only been dead for 2 hours. And she says, "Nay, it is twice 2 months, my lord," meaning it's been 4 months. So this little erratic slip of time might show that he's actually losing his grip on reality a little bit. Even though everything he says seems to be sensical, maybe his grasp of the situation is slipping a bit. The players shock Hamlet with their ability to fake emotions, and they become central to figuring out if Claudius is faking his innocence. So we come back to the line, "The play's the thing," wherein I'll catch the conscience of the king. So keep in mind that whenever you see players, meaning a theatre company or a drama company, in Shakespeare, you have kind of a play within a play. That automatically brings up questions of appearance, deception, and reality. So that's a motif that continues through a number of Shakespeare's works. Hamlet also comments on the fakeness of the physical theatre that they're playing Hamlet in, so he talks about the globe. When he refers to the overhanging firmament, in reality he's talking about the awning on the globe stage. So he describes real things in the audience and kind of breaks suspension of disbelief at this moment. So that gives Hamlet's existential speeches an extra edge, as though he can pierce into the reality of things, even beyond the boundaries of the play, with his sharp mind. In a similar train of thought, Hamlet realises how pointless the pomp and ceremony of rulership is. So he considers how great Caesar became dust over time, the way his body rotted and became part of the earth, and explains to Claudius how a king may proceed through the gullet of a beggar. So he realises that a lot of the things that they're fighting for and, murdering each other for are essentially false, and they won't last very long anyway. If they're real, they're only brief.